So this is the update that's on their website, and it was part of the regulator that just came out last week for February. So ensuring that all advertising, so advertising includes websites, business cards, bus benches, billboards, and social media posts. So if you are making a post on your social media channel that you use for the purposes of advertising your services as a realtor, that counts as advertising. So their rule is, as of October 1st, they're going to have basically a no tolerance policy after that, and they're going to be fining. And again, that's because if they can't prove to the government that they're self-regulating, the government's going to take away our ability to self-regulate. So all they're doing is enforcing the rules that are in the Act already. So RECA is required to clearly indicate brokerage name in any advertising, but that does not mean what advertising standards when it comes to associate advertising their personal brand or brand of the team. So the issue here is like misleading advertising, where team names or the individual brand is huge and the brokerage name is hidden somewhere. So the clarification, the main thing is that brokerage name must be similar in size or larger than any other identifier and immediately adjacent to the identifiers in the advertising. So let's go over some examples here. So individual advertising, this doesn't meet the requirement. Just listed her big name and a little brokerage. But this does meet the requirement and really looked just as good, in my opinion, as an example. So immediately adjacent and similar size as far as font and the like. So another example of an ad, doesn't comply, little bitty one, big name, equal size, that's fine. So same with just listed cards and the like. Business cards are another good example. So you couldn't have just your name or the team name as an example on one side of the card. Every place has to be adjacent. So I get there's branding. Everybody wants to have their own personal brands, like I used to with my team as well. So we totally get that. If the color scheme doesn't work with what you want to do, that's fine. Just be creative about how you can solve that. So you literally have to have the brokerage name. Doesn't have to be a logo. Ideally, you leverage the Remax balloon because there's huge credibility factor, trust, brand awareness that goes with that. But you can use solid colors. There's lots of creativity you have there. And so team advertising, again, examples of business cards, not compliant, equal size. You could have it, however you wanted to creatively do that. Or again, doesn't meet the requirement because there's no brokerage name, or the brokerage name on this one's very small. This would meet the requirement. Immediately adjacent in some manner, could be stacked, could be side by side, whatever you want to do. And in this case, they have the team members' names, the registered associates on each spot. And the other big thing to remember there is if you have an unlicensed assistant or a licensed assistant, you need to clearly indicate you can use associate or realtor as your title, unless you're registered as an associate broker with RECA, and then otherwise you have to say unlicensed assistant. So if someone that's not licensed is on your marketing. So best other example is websites. So that's the most common one. This is actually what created the issue, and I think part of the issue was that a lot of the website providers out there just by default had their designs have the brokerage information at the very bottom, and that created some of this issue with RECA. It's not clearly indicated who the brokerage is. So brokerage name does not appear clearly. It's very small and at the bottom or in the footer. This is the example of it being similarly sized and adjacent. So again, another website example, that doesn't work. You can't have the team with a little bitty one. You have to have it beside, adjacent, and similar sized. So, and it has to be on every page of the website. It must be adjacent to other primary identifiers. So whether it's your name as your brand or your personal logo that you have beside the brokerage name, be creative about it. And there's lots of ways to still have this meet your personal branding needs and goals. So lastly is, as far as teams go and team names, so they've prohibited names that can be easily confused that the team is a brokerage. And this is a compliance thing. It's a important one when things go sideways on deals. Like I'm the I'm our unofficial complaints department, and I deal with stuff probably 2 to 5 times a week where there is issues. So we have a lot of great agents, and most of the complaints I get are from issues on the other side, but they do happen. And so the regulator, RECA, has to be able to know, and the consumer needs to know who they go to in the event of an issue. So you can't use agency, associates, brokerage, brokers, company, corporation, corp, Inc., LTD, etc., mortgages, properties, realty, mortgages, real estate. The exceptions to mortgages, mortgage, real estate, or realty may be used in team names only when followed immediately by either team or group. So you can say the John Carter Realty Group, example, or the John Carter Realty Team or Real Estate Team. So you can do those ones, and that was something we were kind of pushing back on versus their first rendition of this, because we're in real estate. We should be able to say what we do as part of the name. So I'm glad they adjusted that and listened to that feedback. So these changes take effect October 1st, 2019. RECA will give industry team members 6 additional months until March 31st to advertise formally known as. So you have like a transition time, but we're in the spring market. Like, now's the time to do it. But they will have a zero tolerance approach after that. So that means they're going to be fining. If you don't action it immediately, you can lose your license over stuff like this. And it may seem silly and simple, but it's that important. If your advertising guidelines and competition bureau stuff overrides on this, that's federal legislation, like, they take it very, very seriously. So clarity for customers, that's kind of the reason for it. We went over the visual examples. There's an advertising checklist that they have that lets you kind of run through what you have currently and any other questions they have in FAQs. So there's going to be a link below that covers off what that is. But here's the simple one, is this checklist. Collect an inventory of all your advertising. So go through kind of everything you got, make a list, whether you got bus benches, digital ads, how many social accounts, different websites you might have, your RE/MAX websites, etc. Assess whether or not your advertising meets the requirements. So is your brokerage name branding included? Is your brokerage name branding in similar size? Do you have any of the prohibited words? And you're allowed to use team and group. And are you advertising yourself as an expert or having significant experience? If so, know that RECA will hold you to a higher standard. So bottom line is, I say I'm a multifamily and investment expert on my commercial branding. I can back that up based on education, experience, etc. But if you hold yourself out as being a neighborhood specialist or a condo specialist or a luxury specialist, you need to be able to back that up, because if a deal goes sideways and you've put that on advertising, you'll be held to a higher account because you've put yourself out there in your advertising as being a specialist. So we're reviewing the brokerage branding and advertising policies, which we're going to be updating to somewhat comply with a couple of these updates, minor adjustments so, and make sure that they're all done no later than October 1st. So let me know if you have any questions, concerns, feedback on that. I have a direct line to RECA, so if I need to compile feedback that we have, we'll do that. But we've had a few meetings already and got some industry feedback, and I think they've already listened. So my opinion, I think it's great. It'll help avoid those clarifications and hopefully keep us self-regulated and able to double in deals and be still creative in our advertising, but just make sure we're complying to those rules. Talk soon.